It's good to be here. Listen, it's good to be here. It's even better to see you all. It's good to be here, and it's even better to be with you. I'm just going to open us up with a word of prayer, and then after that, I'm going to heat this microphone up right here, and I'm going to turn it over to Lisa McNair. We're here to hear and to engage in conversation with her, hear her story from her and her family's perspective, and to hear everything that the Lord has empowered her through these life experiences to share with us for the betterment of us, all of us. Amen, somebody. Amen. Let's pray. God, our Father, in the name of your Son, Jesus, we do thank you for waking us up this morning. We understand we did not and cannot wake ourselves. And so we are grateful to you for touching us one more time and waking us and for giving us a reasonable portion of our health and strength. Thank you for today. Thank you for Lisa McNair. Through her pain and the pain of her family and the pain of the other three families and many others, we are blessed to hear these testimonies and these stories. And now those of us who know you, we understand just how you have declared that all things work together for the good of those who love you. And so we are grateful to you, even from dark days to brighter days, on our way to even better days. As a country, as a culture, all of us. These and other petitions we thank you for in the name of your Son, Jesus. Let us all say amen. Will you put your hands together and make Lisa McNair feel welcome in this place? This test should be on.
Testing. Okay, yeah. Hold on a second. I'm not playing on my phone. I'm looking for my PowerPoint presentation. I used to have a PowerPoint, and I was not on my A game, or I would have sent that ahead so y'all could see it. So I want to go through it so I can talk on, read my notes. Good morning. How y'all doing? Praise the Lord. Thank y'all for having me. I love the name Little Rock. That's cool. My dad's from Arkansas, a small little town in Arkansas called Fordyce. So it's like microscopic. But been through Fordyce. Oh, Lord. Yeah, we're going to be good friends. Anybody that knows Fordyce, because nobody knows Fordyce. So what I normally do is share the story of my family, and I do not know why it is not loading up. So we're just going to ask the Lord to be with us today and just wing this. But my name is Lisa McNair, and I am the younger sister of Carol Denise McNair, one of the 4 girls killed in the infamous bombing of the 16th Street Baptist Church in 1963. Denise was one of 4 girls. The other girls were Addie Mae Collins, Cynthia Morris Wesley, and Carol Robertson. They were also killed on that day. They were 14 years old and just starting in high school, but when they were tragically taken away. Denise was the youngest of the parents of the girls that day. She was 11, so she was just a baby, and she was the only child of my parents, Maxine and Chris McNair. That was not intentional. My parents had tried to have other children for 11 years. Okay, we forgot to turn this watch off. Too many things to remember to do, y'all. Okay. She tried to have other children for 11 years, but my mother could never carry to term. And so there were many miscarriages between all 3 of us. But God is good, and and He is faithful, and people prayed. And almost exactly a year to the day she was killed, I was born. She was killed on September 15, 1963. My birthday is September 19, 1964. So that was just a blessing. And then 4 years later, and many miscarriages and a stillbirth after that, between the two of us, my youngest sister Kim was born, and my mama was 40. And so I have a younger sister who was born, and she is a local chef in the Birmingham area. And she does a lot of vegan food, and I know y'all think, ugh, but it really is good. A couple of Thanksgivings ago, she did a whole vegan Thanksgiving, and it was the bomb. And I had seconds and thirds, so it was delicious. But now every now and then she sneaks some fried chicken in from churches, so she ain't really wholly all the way down with that vegan thing, but she knows how to do it. But yeah, if her constituents knew she was eating church's chicken and a Hunger Man dinner every now and then, they'd be a little upset. But I'm just telling y'all because we in Florida and y'all not in Birmingham. So, but yeah, she's awesome. She's an awesome person, and I'm very proud of her. There were originally 5 girls in the bathroom that day. I don't know if many people know that. One of them was, the 5th girl was Sarah Collins. She's considered the only survivor of that part of the bombing. She was Addie Mae Collins' sister, and she was standing just far enough away from them that she was not killed, but she lost her right eye, and she had just been in the hospital. It's been the 2 months in the hospital after the bombing. And she has a book out now called The 5th Girl. And it's a wonderful, amazing book that tells her story and her life. So Sarah and I, we both travel, not together, but every now and then we'll be in a city together where we'll speak and on the same panel. And so a couple of weeks ago, we were on the same panel speaking to students that were traveling here from California. And one of the students in the Q&A part asked, how was it going back to high school after you were in the bombing? And she was like, it was terrible. And I had heard part of her tell part of that story before, but I guess I had missed this, or she didn't say it. But this just lets you know how bad this was. Some people think this was far away, and it was history. But she said that it was horrible. And she still had a patch over her eye. And kids would tease her and make fun of her. But this is the part that almost sent me to the floor. She said because there was glass that hit her face when the bomb hit, that there was still glass in her face they didn't get out. And over time, it would just push its way out of her face. And her sister would keep tweezers, so when she would see it, she could pull the shards of glass out of her face. Well, I'm not a fainter, but I almost passed out when she said that, because that just was more than I can't imagine. You lose your sister, and then you're damaged for life. Just unbelievable. My parents were the greatest parents in the world. They are both gone to be with the Lord now. Mama left on the 2nd of January, and I'm still trying to work that out. But I miss her, and she was wonderful. They were both just wonderful. They were funny and lighthearted, and they loved everybody, which, how do you do that? That's what I get asked all the time. How were they able to do that on the heels of what happened to them? But they were able to teach us how to love all people. And that's the way they lived. They did not carry hate or anger in their hearts, but they showed us love and showed us how to love all people. And I think one way that they did that, of course, was their faith and their walk with the Lord. But also, I got some tissues in my purse. I just need to go get them. My dad did not go to church with my mom, which I always used to get irritated about. Since I don't have my PowerPoint, I can just be real with y'all. I used to get irritated because I felt like man and wife should pray together and they should worship together. But I think it was a wonderful opportunity to learn that all white people didn't hate us. So my dad went to a small Lutheran church. That whole congregation, that whole church could fit in here this room a couple of times. And it was all black congregation, maybe 200 or 300 members on roll. All of them were black except for 5 people. The pastor, his wife, and their 3 kids were white. So it gave us the wonderful opportunity to know early on that all white people didn't hate us and all white people didn't mean us ill, that some white people loved us and could love us as human beings and wanted to be there and fight for our cause. And their names were Elwanger, and that we love them. They are still alive today. They're in Wisconsin. They're still fighting for the cause. The wife got arrested recently when George Floyd died. She was on a protest march. I don't know what she did, but she got arrested. She's like in her 80s. So they are still down for us in America, and I just love them. They're awesome, awesome people. My mom's family went to 16th Street at that time. And my mom had 1 sister, and each of them had just 1 daughter. My cousin Lynn and Denise were first cousins, and they went everywhere together. They did everything together. But the morning of the bombing, my mother was actually the only parent that showed up at church with their child that day. The other mothers sent their children ahead with family members or they walked to church. But my cousin Lynn didn't go because my auntie had a newborn baby and she didn't go. And we feel like if Lynn had gone, we would have had 2 people in our family to die because Lynn and Denise were never apart. And she never got over that. And the weird thing about it is, growing up, I always wanted to talk to her about who was Denise, because I have this sister that I never knew. And so you just want to know, what was she like? What did she say? Who was she? And I would ask Lynn about Denise. Would she tell me about Denise? And it wasn't for a while, for years, that I picked up on, I never got the answer to that question. I would ask it, and she would never say, I don't want to talk to you about it, or I'm not going to talk about that. She was clever enough that she would start a conversation about something else, and literally took me years to realize she never answered that question. And so I think she suffered from survivor's guilt, because what people don't know is, like, when that happened, the bombing happened, people quit talking. Y'all know. Nobody said nothing for years about it. It just didn't come up. I've had people tell me that Monday morning after the bombing on Sunday, everybody went back to school. And there was no counselors. It was not on CNN and MSNBC and Fox all day long every day. The president didn't come down. None of that. You just went back to work because God was your vindicator and he would solve it for you. And you knew you couldn't get conviction of a white person anyway back there in that time, so you just kept going. So there was nobody to be there for Lynn to help her heal. And Lynn wasn't the only teenager or child during that time that, probably is still suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder undiagnosed. There are a lot of black people in this country who've been through so much that that's just what's going on in their heads. So she never was able to share her story. That led her into drinking, into drugs, and she was always sweet, She would come to town, she would visit, she'd be laughing, and she'd be loud, and she'd be silly. But she was never, when she died, I thought, I really don't know who she is, because she was never real. She just was covered up all that time and never was able to open up. And this is how bad it was. So in 1997, Spike Lee did a documentary, Four Little Girls. Have any of y'all seen the Four Little Girls? Okay. Now, Pastor, I'm not looking at a watch, so when I go too long, I'm need you to do this because I'm not. I don't. So anyway, in Spike Lee's documentary, Four Little Girls, if you have not seen it, please, it is on all the streaming services, Netflix, Amazon. You can see it, rent it. I'd highly ask you as a favor to me to watch it because it's a very well done documentary. But while Spike Lee was making the documentary, he was at our house one time and looking through pictures. My dad is a professional photographer, so he, hundreds of thousands of pictures at our house. Images, he shows pictures of Dr. King and all that in the movement, lots of images. And he was looking at pictures of Denise. And in looking at pictures of Denise, he kept seeing pictures of Lynn. And he was like, who's that person? Who's that girl with her? And we're like, that's Lynn. That's our first cousin. And he's like, we've got to talk to her. I got to talk to her. I got to have her in our movie. I was like, well, she ain't going to talk to you, Spike, because she ain't going to talk to nobody. And he's like, oh, yes, she will. Yes, she will. Let me talk to her. I'm like, okay. So we called and gave him the phone. And he's talking to her and said, well, I want to have you in my movie. I want to have you. Well, I'm not there. I live in California. He's like, well, that's okay. I'll fly you to Birmingham and want you to come and talk. Well, I have a son, and I have to take care of him. He said, I'll fly you home. So you can stay as long as you want. I'll be gonna make it an open ticket. You can come and spend time with your mama. Well, I don't know. And he's like, just come. I'm going to send the ticket today. Are you going to come? And she said, okay, I'll come. He said, you sure? She said, yeah, I'll come. He said, I'm sending a ticket for you and your son to come home to Alabama so that you can talk to you and be in this movie. And she never went to the airport and picked that ticket up. And she never came. So that lets you know how far buried that was. And she died never having freedom and peace on that. The day after the bombing, Dr. King and some of the other ministers from the SCLC came over to Birmingham to meet the parents. And when they came to meet the parents, they were interested in asking the parents to have a mass funeral for all four of the girls. But Miss Robertson had already prepared her daughter's funeral, so they honored that and respected that and did not ask her to change. But the McNair family, the Collins family, and the Wesley family did have a mass funeral together. And in my PowerPoint, I would have shown y'all, there's a picture of mom and dad coming down the church steps after the funeral. And then there's also another picture that was taken of mama, and she had passed out at the cemetery because the grief was just too overwhelming and too much. Let's see, I'm trying to remember what's the next thing that comes up. I talked to you about the funeral. Dr. King did the eulogy. I don't know how many of you knew that he was one of the ministers that did the eulogy at the funeral. And I had never heard it before till about 10 years ago. I didn't know that I could hear it, but it was recorded. So that was beautiful to actually hear it. And it is so well done. Dr. King was an amazing orator, but it was just off the charts that he could actually do something and say something that meant something. So you can Google it and find it and listen to it, and I would highly advise you to do it. It's only 7 minutes. But also Google the printed version, because the version he wrote was not the version he said. We don't know why he took some of the sentences out. But it'd be interesting to do, if you do that, to just read what he left out and see what he actually said. So it's very interesting. 1997, as I mentioned, Spike Lee did the Four Little Girls documentary. And it's an excellent piece of history. It tells a good story of all the girls, their families, and what life was like in Birmingham. And the first person to be convicted of the bombing was not brought to justice until 1977, which was 14 years after the girls were killed. And his name was Dynamite Bob Chambliss. And he was only convicted of the murder of my sister Denise by Attorney General Bill Baxley. He did not put him up for the murder of all 4 girls because at the time people still didn't want people to be convicted of that. People wanted to just let it go away and not honor it. And Bill Baxley was afraid that if they brought him to trial and if he was acquitted, that he would be acquitted of all 4 murders and could never be brought to justice again for the other ones. So that's why he only brought him up to trial for Denise's murder. And he was convicted of life term in prison and died in prison. But after the documentary came out, it talks about him and it talks about how there were other men identified as having killed the girls, but nobody else had been brought to justice. And so people started to say, well, what about the other people? Well, what about the other men? Well, why haven't they been arrested and brought to justice? And I think the movie stirred up the pot. And shortly thereafter, the FBI reopened the case and found 2 more of the living people who were living to convict, Bobby Frank Cherry and Thomas Blanton. And they were convicted in 2001 and 2002. Justice was delayed, but it was not denied. And they both served life sentences in prison and died in prison. And they were brought to justice by Doug Jones, who was recently our U.S. Senator. But at the time, he was the U.S. Attorney for our district in Alabama. Something just went straight out of my head. But anyway, so we were able to finally get justice, and Mrs. Robertson, Carol Robertson's mom, y'all getting here all these little tidbits that I don't have in the PowerPoint. Carol Robertson's mom died shortly after the last guy was killed. And we always joke and say that Miss Robinson willed herself to live so that she could be there. Because by the time she died, Miss Robinson had had cancer, she had a heart attack, she had a stroke, she'd had anything that you could have that could kill you. She was not going anywhere. And about 3 weeks after that last person was convicted, she got sick, went in the hospital and died. I mean, she was up, she was in a wheelchair, but she could still walk and maneuver and talk. I mean, she was fine. But after that, she went. She lived to see those people. She wanted that justice in her heart, and God let her live that long. So usually after that, I talk about their bombing and the 50th anniversary. 50 years afterwards, there have been a lot of 50ths in the last few years. Birmingham did a big celebration, and they had a commemoration, I should say, and they did statues of the girls. So they're in Kelly Ingram Park, directly across the street from the church, and they look beautiful, and they are depicting the girls, each of the girls. And so my sister, there's a girl on a bench, and there's a bench, and then my sister's standing up on the bench, and she has 6 doves in her hand that I think it's like she's holding them up to heaven. And each one of those doves, one is for each of the girls. But what most people also don't know, that day, September 15th, 1963, was a horrible day because 2 little boys were also killed on that day. One little boy was throwing pebbles at cars passing on the street, and a police officer came and killed him. Another little boy was riding on the handlebars of his bike, and a little white boy had a gun, and he was playing with it, and he shot him off the bike and killed him. So Virgil Ware and Johnny Robinson were also killed on that day. And we like to remember them and honor them when we remember the 4 girls. So that's why she has 6 doves, and that was the artist's rendering on that. But behind her is Addie Mae Collins tying the sash on her dress. And that was taken from Sarah Collins' testimony in trial, that the last thing she saw before the bomb hit was she was coming around the corner and she heard my sister ask her sister to tie the sash on her dress. And that's what she saw her doing when the bomb exploded. So they depict that from what her testimony was. So next year will be 60 years since Denise was killed. And where do we go from here? What are we going to do now? I think it's sad that America seems to be regressing instead of progressing. But I think it has given us an excellent opportunity to see what we can do to make sure that we eradicate racism in this country. I think it has woken us up to wake up and realize that it isn't over. And if we are not focused, we are going to see these ugly things rear their ugly heads once again, which means we all have to get out and register and vote. We have to make sure that our children are registered and vote. I'm 57 years old. I'm not married. I don't have any kids. Me and God have a problem with that, but, he cool, he faithful and everything. But, still wondering, really, God? I think of stuff I'd like to have, and it just appears. So I don't know why that one hadn't come up. But anyway, so, but all my friends have kids. So about a couple of years ago, we were sitting and talking at dinner, and we were talking about voting, and one of them said, now all their kids are about teenagers or they're just in college. And they was like, yeah, I guess my kids are voting. You guess your kids are voting? That's not a guess. I took them to register to vote. I hounded them until they went and registered to vote. I take them with me voting every time we vote. That's what it is. It's not a guess. So you need to make sure your kids and your grandkids are registered to vote. Thing number 2. As black people, many of us live and work near white people. But we've never had shared our story with them. We tend to not want to hurt their feelings and make them feel bad. It's time for us to share our story with them. All of y'all need to go back and tell some white people y'all talked to this week that you saw me and what you heard today. Because this is our shared American history. It's not black history. It's not civil rights history. This is our shared United States American history. And all this stuff happened in our country. And they need to know it just as much as I need to know it. Their kids need to know it just as much. For nothing more than the bravery factor. There's a big thing about being bullied and that kind of thing. Well, heck, nobody was bullied more than black people. And how the people in the civil rights movement, with faith in God, nonviolently, and with love, stood up and protested for rights that belong to us as American citizens. There's nothing more American and nothing more Christian than that. And that's a lesson that everybody can get behind. So we need to share our story with our neighbors. Like this same group of girls, there's 8 of us that get together a couple times a year. And she was talking about, things are so difficult. And I've been walking with my neighbor and, I had to be careful of what I say. I said, y'all go to walking every day and you've never told your story to her. She loves you and she's your friend. She should be able to open herself up to embrace what's going on in you and your people. She should want to do that as your friend. I'm around a whole lot of white people all the time, like they're everywhere, like in my life. You ask where I go to church, I go to a predominantly white church, and that's a whole nother story to tell you about that happened. I did go to black church, but now I'm at white church. At work, when I was working, I was the only black person. And I just woke up one day and I just wasn't going to not talk about it anymore. Every boss I had when I worked, I was like, have you seen the 4 Little Girls documentary? Here's my personal copy, and I want it back. But I'm going to need you to go home and watch it and learn something. Okay. and they always were willing to do it and watched it and learned something. Our story is important. We are human beings too, and what happened to us has affected all of us. Dr. King said, my brother is not free, I am not free. And we are in this together, and only together can we solve this problem and solve this issue. And so I want to tell you a little story. So heading on the fact that I'm around white people all the time, my daddy became a county commissioner, but first he was the first black legislator in our county in 1973, the first one elected. And that put us in an interesting place in that it kind of made us like celebrities, because you got to go a lot of places and we got to be with a lot of people. We were around white people all the time. My daddy was this wonderful professional photographer, so he would take pictures and family portraits, not just black people, but white people. So and he would have meetings, and I got to meet all the legislators, and all of that being around white people back then always made me wonder, what if I walk up and meet somebody who killed Denise? Because at that point, I didn't know who they were, what their names were, or where they lived. But we know they lived in Birmingham. And Daddy was meeting all these people, so I was always worried about that. What would that be like? What would that conversation be like if I met them, and what would they say to me? So fast forward about 12 years ago, I participated in a church program called the Emmaus Walk. And the Walk to Emmaus, it's something like Methodists, I believe, put on. You know about the 269? Oh, I can't remember. I think my walk was 49. A table of Dorcas. So it was like a 4-day retreat for y'all who don't know. A 4-day retreat for women, and if they do one for men. And so when you go, they want you to come back and volunteer and help the next group. So I would volunteer sometimes to come help the next group. I'm a professional photographer like my dad, so a lot of times they want me to come and take pictures and cover the event. And so this particular year, they wanted me to volunteer, and I was really busy and I couldn't do it. And so my friend Mindy, who happens to be white, I had met her, and how we became friends is she had gone to an Emmaus Walk in another state. And so she had just broken up with one of her many boyfriends, and I think they dated 3 months, and this was year 2. She was still crying about it. So I was like, she needs some Jesus and some time to be in church, because she getting on my nerves, and I don't want to hear about this no more. And she needs something to do. So I called her. I said, Mindy, I'm supposed to volunteer at Emmaus, but I can't go. But I'm going to need you to go for me, because you need to be in church. You need some Jesus and something to do. And she said, you're right, Lisa, I sure do. I just really do. And I want to tell you what I was thinking about. So I said, no, we're not going to talk about him today. I just called to tell you that so you can get prepared. And here's the latest number. Call her and tell her you're going to fill in for me. And so she goes and she calls, and they go to the planning meeting, and she gets ready to go to the planning meeting. And on the way back from the planning meeting, she calls me from the car. And she's hysterical, even more so than she is on a regular day. And she's one of those people, those people who just kind of talk all the time, and they ramble. But they don't ramble chronologically. They ramble here, and then they finish the story here, and then they go back to the middle. And so this is Mindy. She's all over the place. So I have to often say, Mindy, you're not making sense. You need to put this story in order so I can follow what you're saying, because I don't know what you're saying. So she starts, oh, my God, I'm so glad you didn't go. She's like, I'm so glad you didn't go. Oh, my God, did you know? Tammy was going to be there? She's like, oh, my God, I'm so glad. Did they tell you? And I was like, Mindy, you're not making sense. I don't know what you are talking about. I'm going to need you to start from the beginning and go to the end. She said, well, Tammy was there. Did you know that Tammy's going to be there today? I said, I don't know who Tammy is, Mindy. Who is Tammy? She said, Tammy's daddy killed your sister. Yeah, that's what I said. And I'm like, what? Daddy's daddy killed your sister. And so I'm just trying to figure that out and put that in my head in a good place. and not pass out. And she goes on to say that this girl named Tammy, whose father was one of the people who helped plan the bomb, was there giving her testimony as part of her walk, the Emmaus. And she did the practice testimony that day. And she wanted to know, did they let you know that Tammy was going to be there, since you were originally the person that was going to be there? And I was like, no, nobody told me anything. And they might not have even known, because Tammy had said that she had never shared that with anybody. And so anyway, I was like, I hung up from Mindy, and y'all know my head is like spinning at this point. I'm just like trying to process that. Number one, why didn't they share that with me, or would they have shared if I had agreed to go on? And then I'm still processing. So what I thought would happen one day has actually happened. And I'm like trying to figure that out. You know, as a Christian, I know you're supposed to love everybody, and God, you know, teaches us to love. And I was like, what, do I love her, or do I want to spit in her face? You know, what do I really feel about her? I mean, she didn't kill my sister, but her daddy did. And what is she like? So, and, you know, so I just didn't think about it anymore. And then fast forward, the weekend takes place. And because I have all these friends in this Emmaus community in Birmingham, my phone blows up Monday morning and Sunday night, because all these people want to, you know, after they get freed from the retreat, they want to call me and tell me, oh, my God, do you know who we saw this weekend? And so they tried to figure out a way for us to meet, and it never happened. And I wasn't really sure I was feeling like doing it. My parents were alive at the time, and I wasn't sure what they were going to feel like, although they were both kind of having a little dementia. And my sister tends to be a little crazy. I wasn't sure what she was going to say, and my head couldn't handle her screaming about that. And so it didn't happen. Fast forward to that next February, was Black History Month. This minister at the church, at Harvest Community Church, who those members helped me to go to the retreat, he tells all of his members, we're going to have a special guest, Black History Month speaker. And I'm not going to tell you who the Black History Month speaker is, but it's a very special guest. So my cousin, who goes to this church, thinks he knows everything and knows nothing. And he calls and he said, it's you, isn't it? It's you. I know it's you. And you're going to be the Black History Month speaker. Pastor Mike won't tell us who the Black History Month speaker is, but I know it's going to be you. Tell me. I said, no, Harold, it's not going to be me. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you just don't want to tell me because Pastor Mike told you not to tell. I was like, no, Harold, it's not me. It's not me. Yeah, it is. You can tell me. You can tell me. I said, no, Harold, it isn't me. Bye. I'll talk to you later. And so I get on the phone. I call Pastor Mike, and I said, hey, Pastor Mike, I heard about you having a surprise Black History Month speaking. Is it Tammy? He's like, yeah, and I really want you there. And I said, well, you know, Pastor Mike, me and the Lord still having conversations about that. And we hadn't determined whether that's going to happen. And I said, but I'm going to keep praying, and I'll let you know. So fast forward, it's the week of, and I've decided to go. So I told my friend Mindy, and she said, oh my God, you can't go by yourself. Yeah, I got to go with you. So this is a predominantly Black church, but I visited there with her before, so she's comfortable with it. And, you know, it's like not too much screaming and singing and loud, you know, so she can handle it. And she's, she says, and we'll take Alicia. So Alicia is our Black friend who is Catholic. And so Mindy said, she'll be scarred for life, but we're going to take her anyway. And so me and Alicia and Mindy bop over there to the church on this Sunday. And when I get there, I let the pastor know that I'm there. It's a small church anyway, so it's not like people don't know I'm in the room because you can see everybody. And he said, well, I want to introduce y'all. And he wants you to meet Tammy. I said, well, I'm going to need to just hear what she got to say, see if I think it's authentic, and then you can introduce them. So church goes on. She gets up, and she does her thing. She's got displays of pictures of her dad that were in the Civil Rights Museum and books on display that mentioned his involvement in the bombing. And he's dead at this point. And she talks about how he was a horrible person. He was just angry and bitter all the time. And that he was mean to them as children. He wouldn't let them play. He beat them and was abusive to them. When integration took place and black kids did start going to school, he and his wife wanted her to be mean to the black kids and definitely not make friends with any of the black kids. But she didn't want to do it. So she rebelled and she made friends with black people. And subsequently, once she graduated from high school, they kicked her out the house. And they wouldn't talk to her anymore. And when he died, they didn't even put her name in the obituary. She was just persona non grata to them. And she said, she knew that the love of Christ would not allow her to do that because she had learned about that from her granddaddy. The same man's daddy who taught her that Jesus loved us all and we have to be loving and kind to people. And that allowed her to be involved in this Emmaus community where she gained another mother and another father and taught her how to love. And it was just I can't do it justice. It was a great testimony and wonderful. And when she got through, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. So fast forward, she sat down, and then the minister got up, and he did a sermon. It really wasn't necessary for him to speak. She had already done church, but you know how y'all do with it. I love y'all anyway. And so she got through, and then when he got through, he asked her to come back up to the front. Then he asked me to come up to the front and asked me to introduce myself to her. Now, that was a Jerry Springer move if there ever was one. And I didn't like it. But I did introduce myself to her. And I told her that my name was Lisa McNair and my sister was Denise McNair, and who was killed in the bombing of 16th Street Baptist Church. And I told her that I had met Reverend Billy Kyles, who was one of the ministers that brought Dr. King up to Memphis to help with the garbage workers right before he was killed. And I used to meet him on a tour group, and he would speak to students. And one of the many wonderful things he would say, and if you all can go Google him, Reverend Billy Kyles, he has an HBO documentary called The Witness. It's fabulous. You should watch it. And it tells about his story. And he said, one of the things he would say, though, was racism and segregation and this whole thing was painful for black people, but shameful for white people. And so instead of us dealing with it, we just sweep it under the rug, the pain and the shame, and we don't deal with it. But the only way for true healing to take place is for us to take the pain and the shame out from under the rug and have the conversation and deal with it. And I thanked her for taking her shame out from under the rug so that we could deal with it. And she cried, and I cried. And then Pastor asked all the women that might have been the age of the 4 little girls to come up, and they made a circle around us and touched us, and we all prayed together. So that was my meeting Tammy. And it was a true God moment. We have continued to communicate, and I like to think I can call her friend. And she has gone on. She had some birth children, but now she's adopted 2 little black kids and is raising them to be wonderful, God-fearing people. So at the end of the day, God is victorious, and he will win over the evil. But we have to make sure that we walk in him in all that we do. So I'll open the questions up for Q&A, and thank y'all for listening to me. Yes, sir.
they were able to convict Dynamite Bob was the fact that his niece actually came out and testified against him, saying that he made the statement, if they think they're sad today, wait until tomorrow, because that night the Klan put the bomb underneath the church.
Yes, that's true. His niece she pretty much gave the death nail in the coffin because she was in the house the day before hearing them playing and what they were going to do. And so, sorry, y'all. She was an eyewitness to that. And that really did cause him to have to be convicted. Yes, sir.
I forgot to say, Lisa, that this is on our YouTube channel.
Oh, Lord, I'm blowing my nose on
Help yourself. Let me tell you, there's a member of this church named Talitha Rollins. Let me tell you. She said everybody that joins this church has to be a little bit touched. You'll be perfect with us. You just fit right in. It's some great little rock folk out here. They know it. They all crazy. The people that are part of this church. I'm not talking about the white people or other people. That's not. I'm talking about the people that are part of this church are a little touched. So you fine.
Well, that's okay. I really can't be embarrassed about anything. I just
praise His holy name.
Yeah, praise His holy name.
I just mentioned that because I want you to answer in your mic.
Thank you very much.
And when you get the mic, like Brother Gullah did, do like he did and ask your question in the mic so that it can be heard by those who are watching on YouTube, and then for those who will watch later on today and next week and so forth and so on.
And don't blow your nose while you do it.
Well,
yeah, okay. Yeah.
If you got to blow it, blow. Don't get me started. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Anybody else have a question?
Hi, Lisa.
Hey.
Hey,
girl! Hey, girl, this my cousin Sharon.
Hi, y'all. How everybody
I'm
doing?
so glad you came.
Yes, I told you I was coming. I just had a question. I've had some issues here in the Escambia County as far as my son going to school. And I reached out to the community here in Pensacola, not being from Pensacola myself. But I reached out to the community to try to get them to come together to fight for our children, as far as how the school system is handling them and everything. I couldn't get the people together. Is there a way to bring the people out? I mean, I got the children to put out flyers and all type of things to meet at the school board, and it's just hard getting the parents of the children to come out. How do we unite ourselves to work together to push forward to help our children or to make a difference?
Girl, that's a hard question. I really don't know.
And
I guess it's a fight. Sometimes people get caught up in all that life stuff that they're doing that they just don't realize how important. Like in the state of Alabama right now, there's a bill being passed. And if we're not careful, it's going to pass this week, saying that we cannot teach divisive issues or things that are hurtful in schools. And they took it so far that they made it vague as to say divisive or hurtful, which could be anything. They made it that vague, but the law says in elementary, high school, and college. Now, ain't nobody supposed to tell you what you can learn in college. You ought to be able to learn whatever you want. That's going to pass in the state of Alabama if we're not careful this week. So I'm going to put it all on my Facebook page and my Instagram. I have emailed all the senators and congressmen, and senators and state senators in our area, and just been a stalker. You just got to get some more people with you that can stalk people. Get some other parents whose children are not being treated, and just pick up the phone, put it on Instagram, put it on Facebook, call people. It's almost like you got to tell your church's church. A lot of times, people don't know what's going on. People do not know what's going on. Nobody gets a newspaper anymore. If it's on the news, they're not watching the news. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter's where everybody's watching now. It's a whole new ball game. But you got to get people upset and angry enough. Call your local congressman, your local senators, your local state representative, your local city council person. They ought to be stirring up the pot instead of just sitting up there getting a check, because they work for us and we elect them. And everybody needs to remember that. Everybody that's down there in Montgomery, Birmingham is Montgomery and whatever it is here, you need to call them and remind them they are only in office by the grace of you. Okay? That's all I can say, cuz, tell them where you were today, that there were 4 little girls that didn't get a chance to go to high school and deal with anything because of craziness like this. Then people just need to get angry. They need to get mad enough to do it. So, we'll talk some more. Maybe I can think. And then, of course, pray.
Hello, Miss Lisa.
I'm going to get a hug later, so don't go nowhere. Okay.
I want to speak on the injustice. How did you and your mother and your family now feel after all them years that the men that killed your sister come to justice? What was the relief like for your mother?
They were real interesting about that. They didn't talk about that a lot. I never forget that last trial when it was over. We sat there and judge told us we couldn't make loud noises when the verdict came in, couldn't comment. And I was like, really, dude? And so when the verdict came out guilty, we just all cried. We were all sitting there and hugging each other. And even when I looked up the prosecution team, Doug Jones and his team, they just weren't just like moved. They were weeping, boo-hoo crying grown men. They were boo-hoo crying grown men. And then we left. And the press was out there, and everybody was talking to the press. They didn't talk to anybody. They just got in the car, and we went home. So it was weird that they didn't. I think I would have at least said, thank you, everybody who helped me, helped us, yada, 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 yada. But they just chose to be quiet like that. And I think they probably were grateful and appreciative, and I'm sure they told Doug Jones and that later. But I think, at the end of the day, Denise didn't come back. So they're grateful that justice was served, but still, it's still sad.
Full disclosure, while we're waiting on Joy, the young lady that asked you that question is Gladys Scott. She and her sister served double life sentences in Mississippi for allegedly stealing $11.63. So Jamie just went home to be with the Lord after an illness, but that's Gladys Scott. So
God bless you.
I hope you can
my
talk
goodness.
to her later. Yeah. Okay,
Have
Joy.
mercy. Jesus.
Good morning. Thank you so much for everything, this is like the testimony of true forgiveness. And I think everybody all over this country could learn something just from that real story without the PowerPoint. So just keep saying it the real way without the PowerPoint, because some of us need that. But I want to know, as a little girl from Memphis, who are our leaders? You mentioned a lot of things. You mentioned Dr. Samuel Billy Kyles. You mentioned Dr. Martin Luther King. You mentioned the SCLC. We live in a society now where there are really no true leaders to even go to her point, because it's all filled with not the love that filled those individuals or the stick and stay, but the anger. Mm-hmm. So who are the people? Because is it Black Lives Matter? Is the SCLC still alive? And I know it is, but they're not as boisterous as they were back then.
I think you have those people who are our leaders, but I really believe is you are a leader. Each one of us is our own leader. The pastors in our areas are leaders. But I think at the end of the day, it's like your salvation. You can't count on nobody else to save you to go to heaven. You got to make that decision for yourself. You can't Sharon can't let nobody else help her get her child straight and help her child at her school. She got to be there for herself. You know, so you're going to work hard to do. You want other people to come in with you. But it's at the end of the day, it's just like being single. Sometimes I get tired of being single and hanging out with myself. But I'm not just going to sit at home. And if somebody's supposed to come hang out with me and go travel with me and go do this, and people bail out on you all the time. But I'm not going to not go because you're not there with me. At some point, you just got to stand up and be your one party at one. And you'll be surprised how people will follow behind you if you do that. But we got to be proactive about it. It has to be as important as everything else. You wake up in the morning, you get dressed, you brush your teeth, you eat breakfast, you go to work. You know you got to put them 8 hours in. You got to buy groceries, pay that power bill. Pay your income tax on the 15th of April, and all those things. Get your driver's license renewed every 4 years. Get your tag done on the month that's your birthday. Stalking your elected officials needs to be on those list of things you do. You don't know who your state representatives are. Each one of us has a state representative and a senator in our area. Each one of us has a city council person and a mayor. Each one of us has a representative in Congress and 2 senators that represent you. The senators represent you, both of them, whether you voted for them or not. I don't think that we are conscious enough of that kind of thing, and then we vote for them and like, yay, they won, and then we go back and go to sleep. We have to stay cognizant and vigilant and focused. We've gotten comfortable. We got our rights. We got to be able to go places we want to, do things we want to. You know, we got Beyonce, we got Barack, you know. Oh, yay, woo, woo, woo. And I think what's going on now, we had to be reminded of what happened in 1963 because we were asleep. And we need to wake up. Or we're going to get left out, run over, and you blink and it'll be gone. Our rights will be gone. We should go down to Montgomery. What's the capital of the state? Tallahassee. And protest stuff that's going on all the time. Every day. You can pull up on the internet. You get your state representatives and your state senator and your representatives. They've got an email address on there. They've got a phone number on there. And they've got an address, a mailing address. And we should all be stalking them because they work for you. And if you don't get them to vote like you want them to vote, don't get what you want, 4 years from now, you need to vote them out. They work for you. It doesn't mean you're going to get everything that you want. It's not going to happen like that. There's no fairy tale. There's no Easter Bunny and no Santa Claus. But if we do nothing, nothing is exactly what you're going to have. So I pray that, we just, you may be the new leader in your circle. Just in your circle of friends.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Gwendolyn Perrier, and in 1963, I was 13, and I remember that I was in the 9th grade, and she was in my class. There's quite a few of us that happened. That was terrifying to me. I was frightened, and I remember thinking that could happen to us, and I know other people who grew up at that time had to feel that way because it was very scary to me, and because we didn't have that kind of violence in Pensacola. Mm-hmm. There was in our I guess our race relationships wasn't as bad mm-hmm. as other people experienced, but just to know that happened to someone else was very scary, and of course I participated in a lot of things that went on in Pensacola. We had our stuff, mm-hmm. We had our stuff, and as a young'un, I was out there, in the midst. And I see that we don't have the same kind of thing that went on. We have someone here, our pastor, he gets out there and gets mixed up in it too and stuff. But then a lot of times we don't know that what is going on, and we'll miss out on it. So we've just got to stay focused and keep up if we can, and find out wherever we can, and try and participate in things that is going to help. Like that young lady with her child. I have 2 grandsons. They're in high school. We haven't faced anything like that, but I feel for her, and if whatever I can do to help her, I'll do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Sharon, what high school does your son go to? He goes to Escambia. So anybody else go to Escambia? Anybody got relatives? Y'all can see her.
Oh, Escambia, I fought with the Escambia County for about 2 months. I pulled my son out and sent him back to Alabama to finish school. He graduated 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. Good.
I do want to ask you this. About how long did it take the church to rebuild, and how did that happen? From physically, not spiritual, of course, but the physical building, and who came to help, if anybody came to help. Can you talk through that a little?
Yeah. Now, I was just a baby, so I don't remember all of that. But I do know that I think it took I heard somebody say it took about 8 months to a year. I remember somebody recently when I was speaking in the church saying that. And we went to church I think some other church allowed us to worship at that time. But, and this is another thing in my PowerPoint that's pretty cool. There's a window in the back of the church now, a big, huge stained glass window of a black Christ that was given to the church by the people of Wales over there with Charles and Camilla and the Queen. They heard about the bombing right after it happened, and they were so moved. They were so moved and hurt that little kids would be killed, that not the monarchy or the government, but individual people of Wales began to gather dimes and pennies and dollars. And they raised money. They found an artist. They paid him to design and do the stained glass window. Then they paid for the shipping to come to America and be installed at the church a year and a half after the bombing took place, because they wanted to honor the 4 girls. So this was not just Birmingham, Alabama, United States. It affected people all over the world. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I think I've been talking a while, so I'm going to sit down. The window? She asked, was that in the documentary about the window? No, it isn't, but you can Google it. It's called the Wales window, and you can see a picture of it. It's beautiful, beautiful, beautiful window. And I think I talk about it in my book. So in September, I'm having a book, written my memoir. I've wanted to write it all my life, and it will be out in September. It is called Dear Denise, Letters to the Sister I Never Knew.
Are you going to come to Pensacola to have a signing?
Oh, you going to have me back?
Get right back there in the gym.
Okay.
I'm waiting on you.
Okay, all right.
Okay,
We got to
all
work that out then.
All right, where's Terry?
And
We
so.
good? Okay, we good.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much. I'll add that to the list. I'm giving my publisher the places I'm coming.
One more time. We just got a sponsor for it as well.
Well,
For
praise the
network
Lord.
there. You just heard it.
Sponsors are good.
Sponsors
That's a
are good.
thing. It's a good thing.
Sponsors are good.
Thank y'all so much, and God bless y'all.
Thank you as well. Can y'all appreciate? It's wonderful. Absolutely. Absolutely. I asked my question about the rebuilding just again. It's unfortunate that we have a black church and a white church, but I know that's reality. It's reality. It's unfortunate. One day we will have just the church, but it is what it is for right now. And Greater Little Rock is a part of the majority black church nationally, statewide, and locally, led by Jerry Young nationally, and so forth and so on. And the majority white church, statewide, nationally, statewide, and locally. Locally is Pensacola Bay Baptist Association. And as such, the PBBA locally, majority white, are wonderful when it comes, period, but especially when it comes down to reaching out and helping, extending a helping hand, physically, financially, mentally, socially, emotionally. So I was just hoping and praying that your answer was going to be there was some part of the white church at that time that reached out to 16 and say, let us help you. As far as you know. Okay, good, yeah. Okay, I understand. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Come on, can we appreciate her one more time? That's good stuff. That's good stuff. Yes, sir. You just did. Tuesday night from 6 to 7:30 at the Rex. You could hear this and more. Probably an actual PowerPoint. Thank you for that plug. One more time. Tuesday night at the Rex Theater, 6 to 7, you say? 6 to 7:30. Ms. Lisa McNair, is she you solo or there's a panel? Free and open to all. 6 to 7:30, Rex Theater. And I'm going to do my best. What Sunday was it, what? Third Sunday? Second? What was Sunday? Yesterday? Third Sunday? Okay, I have a trustee meeting, but I'm going to do my best to be there again. I really am. Trustee meeting at 6:30. That's great. That's wonderful. So we cannot thank Lisa enough, and everyone that's associated with Pensacola Civic Con, who have brought her to Pensacola. You spoke at my alma mater, one of my alma maters, Anderson University last year. Yeah. And when I put you and the church had you on our Facebook page, and I shared it from the church's page, and one of the professors there reached out to me and said how wonderful the event was when you came to Anderson last year, and how it just needed to be done, and it was a blessing not just to the campus but to the city. And so I'll go back and give them a call and tell them, ditto for us. Yeah. Anderson is pretty good. Okay, I don't know anything else other than to get out. I mean, dismiss. I know how to do that well. Am I in order if I dismiss right now? I think so. God, our Father, we thank you for what we have seen, heard, and felt. Thank you for Lisa McNair, for the courage and the character that you have built within her. Thank you for those who have brought her here today. Thank you for those who have brought her to Pensacola and Escambia County today. Thank you for reminding us that we all are a leader. Thank you for reminding us that we have an expectation from you to let our light shine for you toward justice for all. Forgive us for our sins. Bless us to be a blessing. In the name of your son, Jesus, we do pray. Amen. God bless y'all.